Good afternoon, and thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Adriana Cook with After My Last Setback, and my guest today is Luz Canino Baker. Thank you so much, Luz, for being part of our series today.
Nice to be here. Nice to see you.
And it's so nice to talk with you today about success, your amazing accomplishments, and life's journey, and how that translates to success and coming from a setback and back into our perseverance. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about your journey and the things that you've done?
Sure. So I always like to say that I'm a banker by trade. I spent 28 years in banking. Never a career that I really chose, but certainly a career that allowed me to raise my family. Many of those years I was a single mom. So the infrastructure of the bank, the security of the bank was what kept me there. But finally, I did have a setback. In my 20th year, I think at the bank was when I really realized, gosh, I never chose this career. Here I am, 20 years. Like, do I want to go to my grave saying I was in a career that I never really selected? And I couldn't just quit. I was a single mom by then. But I kept thinking about, well, one day, I'll have the opportunity to leave. And that came 8 years later. So in my 28th year of the bank, I decided, I was remarried by then. And I thought, well, if I don't leave now, I will never leave. It's really scary to leave security, something like that, something that everybody, I knew a lot about banking. I really enjoyed it, but I didn't want to go, as I mentioned, to my grave in a career that I never really selected. So I left, and even before I left, I had met a few more senior women, and I started expressing my desire to really work in the community that I grew up in. I grew up in what is now the Little Village area, which is primarily a Mexican community. So I wanted to really go back into my community and do some work there, take my corporate experience and really give it back. So I got hired within 2 weeks of leaving the bank. I was already hired by a nonprofit organization called ASE as their managing director. And really, I think that life changed for me immensely because I was managing director of programs and events, and I was putting on conferences and events almost every month in 5 different cities.
Wow.
And I realized, whoa, I can take everything that I've learned in corporate America and bring it to this nonprofit organization and make it stronger. So I was doing that, and at the same time I was growing because I was beginning to use all of the skills that I had gained through, my master's at the University of Chicago. So I spent some time, 2 years at that nonprofit organization, and then more things started to happen.
I think that's incredible, and I commend your courage to find yourself in this place of utter success in the eyes of obviously so many around us, right? You're in corporate, you're in this great place at this bank, but yet in your heart you feel like, oh, this isn't the place. This isn't, I have a yearning for more, for different. A lot of times I think in our society and our culture, it feels like our career finds us. But so many of my peers, and I've met so many people over the years who have wanted a different career, but also felt stuck in that place and not having the courage to come out and say, no, I want more or different.
Right.
Maybe it's not necessarily more, it's just different. And for you to, it took 8 years, but for you to be able to say, no, that's okay. I do agree that this isn't the ultimate, and I'm going to be looking for more or different.
Yeah, and then I think that, I'd been there for 2 years, and then, I don't know if you remember the 2008, 2009 financial crisis. Well, a lot of nonprofits suffered during that time, and our nonprofits definitely took a hit. So at that point in time, laid off the entire staff with the commitment that I would come back. And for a moment, I thought, yeah, I'll come back. But then I realized, well, I'm going to be the only employee. I'm going to be sales and marketing and event planning. And I thought, no, this is going to be, I'm not going to be able to do a really good job. So I turned down the offer to come back. And instead, I actually gave of my time for almost 6 months there without pay. To help them to reestablish themselves. But then I thought, you know what, this is probably the time for me to do what I really want to do. And I had been a coach for many, many years, kind of part-time. And I decided, well, let me launch my coaching practice, which is LNC Coaching. And at the same time, I resurrected a desire that I had when I was in high school. I wanted to be a teacher. So somehow I got offers to be an adjunct professor at 3 or 4 universities, and I found myself also teaching at these different universities, which was a major challenge because they all have different systems and different practices. But it helped me to realize that I really enjoy teaching, and I just figured out that I really enjoy teaching adult students, that they would value more of what I could bring into their lives than a really young person could. So I then started, I think it was in 2012, unofficially started a nonprofit organization called Latinas on the Plaza. And that started out with just putting on full-day conferences for women, Latina women, because I noticed by going to a lot of conferences that there were few, maybe 5 Latina women out of hundreds in the room. And I thought, where are our women?
Yes, where's my demographic represented?
So I actually was successful for 4 years putting on full-day conferences where we had close to 100 Latina women come to the conferences. But that is quite exhausting and quite expensive. And I felt like I wasn't really making an impact because it was a once-a-year conference. So I put everything back on hold, and I said I need to take another direction. And at that point, I knew that what tends to work are cohort-based programs. So I launched cohort-based programs, leadership programs for the women that I was serving in the conferences. And then eventually I started serving the younger population, which is girls 19 to 30. And I do that in a 10-week boot camp. And eventually I am now serving little girls starting as young as 4 through, right now I have through 9-year-olds. So things have been evolving, and as long as they're all kind of connected and teaching the women to empower them, to understand that they have gifts, that they have talents, they have strengths, believing in them. I see somebody walk in, the first week, and 10 weeks later they're different. They're very confident. So that's the work that I really love doing.
Now, are these boot camps here, or are they an away program? Are they in the, so people who attend, can they attend as they in their own living space, or do they have to go somewhere for them?
Yeah, so we did have to go virtual during COVID,
of course,
with the boot camp. So we know that we can do it virtually, and there is some thought about offering that virtually, because I have some women in New York who want to do the program. We have an office in Brookfield, and so these classes typically are live classes. The girls are with us for 10 weeks every Saturday, 8 to 4, and they're more experiential learning. It's not just PowerPoint, and so we have them do things like improv, or we bring somebody, a teacher who talks about how to think on your feet. So she has you throwing balls and throwing chickens, and so it's very, very interactive. So that component is really hard to create in a virtual environment.
In a Zoom environment.
Yes. But it is, the demand seems to be out there, and I am trying to think about the best way of serving a larger audience who could benefit from the program.
Okay, so scaling the model to a more national community or
Yeah.
Got it.
Yes.
Okay. And tell me about the books that you've written.
So my very first book was Designing Your Life Plan, and I think the reason that book is about looking at your life today and then deciding what you want it to be 5 years from now.
Mm-hmm.
And I have you look at your life in segments, like different domains: your family, your children, your extended family, your career, your finances, and other things that you might be thinking about, retirement or any kind of hobbies that you might have, and really looking at those specific segments or domains is what I call them, and really defining in great detail what you want it to look like. So it's not for you to just think about, well, I wish I could have this. This is like assuming that it's 5 years and you're writing in very great detail, like there's a candle on the table, the smells are there. When you write it at that different level, you can visualize that, and it almost motivates you forward to really, start designing your life towards reaching that 5-year goal. So that
because clearly, if you don't have a goal, if you don't have a destination, there's no reason for you to move towards that space, right?
Right,
so
right,
you're just
right.
stagnating or going through life.
Yes, and the beauty, first of all, 5 years goes by quick. A lot of people think 5 years. Well, I can barely do 1 year. Well, I'm exhausted if I try to do 1 year because I am behind in 1 year, right? But 5 years, I could actually dream big from 5 years from now. But in reality, 5 years goes by very quickly. So it gives you enough time to put this dream out there in the future, and then you have 5 years to begin to take the action towards it. So as simple as like a marathon. A lot of my girls and myself, we want to run marathons. And when I first put that out there in my vision, I thought, I've never run. I mean, a minute. It hurts to run a minute. But over the years, I ran several 5Ks, 8Ks, 10Ks, and I've done 2 half marathons. So I haven't done that marathon yet, but I am so much closer, and I would never have been there had I not declared it as something that I wanted to do. So, so it can that designing your life plan, and if you do it, it will pull you into the future, and you will accomplish most of the things that you have in there. The beauty is that I've started to do this with my husband. So now we sit down together and we look at our lives because we're a unit.
Yes.
And we talk about, okay, where do we want to travel this year? What do we want to do with our children? What about our finances? Don, of course, brings out the spreadsheet.
There's the analytical part of your unit.
Right. But, when it comes to travel, it's really cool. We don't have to hesitate. Like, where are we going? We pull out the plan and we say, okay, we said we wanted to go to Greece, Israel, blah, blah, blah. And then we just pick one. He says, just pick one. That's where we're going next year. Because it's already been decided. Yes,
because you already decided in your mind, we're doing this, so let's just figure out the plan of how to get there.
Exactly.
I love it. Do you have a specific advice for someone who are going through a setback, or who may be going through a setback right now and maybe feeling super defeated with life, and where do you pick up the pieces? And
yeah, so interestingly enough, with my boot camp, this Saturday the girls are graduating, and I had them do what's called a fear project, a 30-day fear project. So they had to identify that thing that has been holding them back or limiting their lives, and they had to take a different action every single day for 30 days. And so last Saturday they reported back. I have 11 girls in the program, and all 11 reported back. The changes that occurred, the difficulty, the failures, the successes, that 30 days really triggered a change. It may not have triggered a full change, but it has triggered a change in them, and it actually has given them the knowledge that they can make a change in their life instead of letting these fears and these limitations hold them back. So I would
dictate their actions.
I love it. So I am like all about these, take 30 days, to take steps towards something that's limiting you. Like I'm thinking next year for me, I want to do everything different. That's my goal for next year. So every program that I do is going to be different.
Different does not mean bad.
Right.
It just means different.
It's a little scary.
Scary's okay.
It's a little scary, but it's also exciting because I was like, oh, so, these programs, they can get a little monotonous sometimes because I'm always doing the same thing.
Sure.
So I'm thinking, how do I liven this up? And I'm like, we're going to do it differently. So, for example, that 10-week boot camp is going to go down to a 5-week boot camp.
Wow. Okay.
But we're going to do a full day versus, a 4-hour session. We're going to do an 8-hour session on Saturday. So I'm kind of excited about that change already.
Now, what I'm hearing you say is nowhere in this conversation does the fear go away.
No.
The fear exists, but it doesn't stop you from moving forward.
Right.
So to the point of don't be paralyzed by your fear. Don't let the fear dictate your inaction.
Yes.
Continue with the strategy, continue with the planning, continue with your action in spite of it.
Yeah, it's almost the same as when you have a critical voice that's telling you, no, you can't do this, you're not good at, you're not good enough. So I teach my girls to look over their shoulder and say, got it, acknowledge, thank you very much, but I'm doing it this way.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Almost like speaking to that voice or to that fear.
Yes.
So, what about any success stories? Do any success stories from all of your graduates come to mind? You've changed and empowered so many lives over the years.
I measure the success of the programs that I run based on transformation. And it may not really be huge, but it's very personal. So most of my girls come in very shy, very quiet, and they lack confidence. And they're amazing. I get to know them over the 10 weeks or the 6 months that I'm with other women. And I begin to see who they are, how powerful they are, the value that they have inside of them. And when that starts to come out, that's when I'm like, okay, now I know why I do this work.
That gives you that strength
helps
to move
me
forward.
to move forward.
I love
Yes,
that.
I always have to remember that there's changes, or the girls will acknowledge me and tell me, thank you, Luz, because, I'm already seeing that I'm making a change.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So transformation can occur in any increment, any amount, at any level. It doesn't have to be
huge. No, it doesn't.
Nothing is black and white. It's all different degrees of it in itself. I love that. How can the audience find you, your program?
So, as I mentioned, I'm an executive coach. So, lnccoaching.com.
lnccoaching.com.
Yes, my coaching practice. And if anyone's interested in taking any kinds of assessments, there's a ton of them out there that you can purchase, and I will make them available to you at a cost, of course.
Of course.
And then my nonprofit organization is latinasontheplaza.org. We have amazing newsletters out there where you can see our students and see the work that we do. And if this is an area of passion, developing women is a passion for you, and you feel like this is an organization that you can want to support, you can easily make a donation there too.
Fantastic. So if you have any specific questions for Luz, you can always reach out to me and I will pass on your information to Luz. You can always reach me, Adriana, at 312-497-2044, 312-497-2044, or directly for Luz, go to latinasontheplaza.com. .org. latinasontheplaza.org, and you can support that incredible organization. I am so delighted to have heard part of your journey today and to be able to support you in all of the amazing things that you do. And thank you so much for sitting down with me today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And thank you for tuning in to After My Last Setback today. Take care.